So we're back again with some of our startups, our FiRe startups, and we are talking about bleeding edge medicine. Now, they've asked me to host this, and I'm obviously not one of the specialist biologists, of whom there seem to be so many, both in the audience and, of course, up here. I think what I would like to start with just is to get you guys, and now obviously we've had an introduction to all of the kind of treatments and diagnostic tools and so on that you work with, but perhaps you could just, well, in the case of those with treatments, or just remind us, I mean, it's a cancer treatment in your case, but could you just remind us sort of the, if you like, the basis of the science? Because when we talk about, obviously, these new treatments, so much of it is either kind of, DNA-based, biome-based. It's just to get us a picture, I suppose, of the multiplicity now of different forms of science that are at play when we are coming up with these extraordinary new treatments. Maybe just remind us exactly in your case what it is that if you like, the biological basis of which your treatment has emerged, from which it's emerged.
Do I have an hour to do that?
Okay, very simply, if possible.
Science has advanced so much that we are now looking at biology from so many different points of views. And I think that if you look at the Hep C, for example, the drug that came out with huge rate of cure, that was an approach to inhibit the virus based on the pathway and the biology of the virus. Immuno-oncology is looking at the immune system. That's really a shift in the last few years, not attacking the tumor or the disease directly, but engaging and making sure that the immune system that has already been there and been developed over thousands of years are now back to normal function. So it really depends, and cancers, for example, we talked about yesterday, it's about 100 different diseases. So many different things can go wrong. So understanding mechanisms and understanding what went wrong, what was normal and what is not now, helps a lot with the approach. So whether it's small molecule, whether it's vaccine, immunotherapy, any interruption that leads. I hope I answered that.
Yeah,
it's a very
well, absolutely. So the triggering of the immune system,
right,
which is, I guess, one very specific strategy. Sean, I mean, tell us more about what your work, but also just how these different, I suppose, these different strategies are being triggered now by startups like yours.
Yeah. Well, I think we've known for a long time that the immune system is important in cancer surveillance. We see that with people who are immunosuppressed. They have a significantly increased risk of cancer. People who tend to beat very serious cancer tend to do so because their immune system kicks in and is able to fight the cancer. So a lot of the innovation in our field right now is really about reprogramming the immune system, assisting the immune system in recognizing the tumor as foreign, which it typically doesn't do, and then allowing it to do what it ought to be doing, which is fighting the tumor and destroying the tumor.
Don.
Okay, well, we're in infectious disease diagnostics, and you can think of this is a challenge of detecting very small numbers of very small things in a very big volume. And the solutions that have been developed so far, which are actually quite amazing, in the 1800s, the Petri dish, which allows you to actually see bacteria. It requires a huge amount of growth, and it takes a long time, but it's actually extremely effective, just takes a long time. And then today there's rapid nucleic acid tests, DNA tests. What we have done is developed a new kind of technology that's very simple, where we can actually count microscopic and submicroscopic things by taking their picture without magnification, using very inexpensive. So we can do it. We can meet that challenge by something inexpensive and very fast, and that improves patient treatment.
Caitlin, diagnostics again, right?
Absolutely.
Something very narrow, but in your case, you're looking at bodily reactions to a condition.
Exactly. And in our case, in many cases, being on the bleeding edge means getting into space that's very complicated. In our world, it is very, very simple. We're looking at a real problem that is absolutely ubiquitous and identifying using an existing technology in a new way to actually identify and prevent problems from occurring. So we're very much trying to be on the preventative side. We all understand the huge problems with antibiotics and the need to reduce antibiotics, but it's even more important to reduce them in children. One of the things that we now know, which just as we're really starting to learn about antibiotics, is that when we give an antibiotic too soon or too often, we suppress the child's immune system response so that that child never develops the antibodies that are necessary to fight that bacteria, and that lasts throughout life.
And could affect all kinds of conditions.
Exactly. And so we are looking to get very early, very simple, a simple, inexpensive solution to prevent significant downstream effects.
Tomorrow's practice, that's part of our heading here. I mean, in the case of you two, with you're obviously going direct to the physicians and saying, guys, we need to kind of reinvent how, well, in very specific cases, but how you actually go to work in the morning. I mean, is there an industrial kind of challenge here about kind of reinventing a little bit how the physicians are thinking? I mean, obviously yours is a very specific, narrow thing. I'm inviting you to kind of think more broadly, perhaps, than your own products. But you know what I mean? Is there to some extent a problem, or has there been a problem with a gear shift in terms of how physicians actually go to work?
Yeah, so I think in the one sense, and actually for our business, it's a good thing that we're actually not changing the practice of medicine. Our tests will be done in hospital labs. We're looking at hospital infections. That's where the tests probably should be done. And so we're actually not disrupting the current flow. But in terms of the future, you know, the way things will go is that that things will be disseminated out, you know, to the end user, and so that really will change practice, where physicians and nurse practitioners and minute clinics are doing more and more of the diagnostics. So that is certainly happening, and it will come.
Caitlin, it's a very small, you can wave it again for the sake of the audience, a very small piece of kit we're talking about here. So hopefully not too hard to get into practices, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is the tool primarily used for the diagnosis of middle ear infections, otitis media, today. You all recognize this. Shine a light in your ear, look at the outside of the eardrum, attempt to guess what's going on the other side of that eardrum. We consciously, to your question, chose, we can talk a lot about what's good and bad about our medical system, but to not change anything. If you can use this thing, you can use this thing, because this is exactly the same set of steps and exactly the same amount of time, and in fact, it actually saves a physician time. So we very consciously tried to create a device that slides very simply into today's processes. Anybody can just push a button. You don't even need to have much training. Push a button, get an answer. This also makes us very applicable, not just in MD situations, but any level of practitioner, including in places where there are no MDs. So very applicable, broad application.
Oren, I mean, your drug, of course, is one now that you are deploying in cases of cancer, but it's almost like designed, or you're saying has a particular benefit when used in combination, right?
Right.
So it's a team effort. You've come up with one thing, but you're throwing it into a team effort, right?
Yes, and I think that's going back to your previous question. I think that physician will have to adapt to the new reality. And the new reality in medicine, that you have to acknowledge that it's very complex. And the treatment has to be, it seems like it's going towards the personalized medicine, the matching of the treatment to the disease. And also knowing what's out there and how it can benefit the patient. For example, we think about small molecule, the traditional treatment, but there is another approach for cancer therapy developed by Carl June and then supported by Novartis, where he's taking the T cells out of the body, re-engineering them, putting them back in to attack the tumors. So I think combinational therapy, taking almost like a cocktail that is applying different attacks on the virus, on the tumor or the virus or the disease or the cause of it, it's probably going to change the way medicine is going. And having small molecule attacking the tumor from the inside, in the combination of inducing the immune system to recognize there's a tumor here and wake it up, just like was mentioned, that's probably where medicine is going to head towards.
Sean?
Yeah, I think that, you know, in cancer, we have this traditional strategy where we're using chemotherapy to control the tumor growth and trying to use this external force of this drug to control to control the tumor over a long period of time. I think what Oren and I are talking about now is really applying the drug over a short period of time and trying to reprogram the immune response so that it has the memory and the longevity that it needs to control the tumor over a long term. And we think that's really the way that you can get complete responses in cancer and maintain those responses over many decades.
Is there any conflict here? I mean, you're all kind of reasonably small companies starting up. You know, you're out there fighting for your position in a big, bad world of pharma and so on. I mean, is there a sense that that collaboration, that the system, I suppose, supports collaboration as much as it does competition?
Yeah, I think, well, it's certainly a competitive landscape. I think one of the things that has evolved with respect to the pharmaceutical industry is that they have gradually progressed out of research and development by and large. So while they still do a fair amount of research and development, they've become more reliant on companies like Oren's company or my company in order to obtain some of the most attractive assets for their portfolio. And so there's more of an interest in sort of in licensing, in sourcing, collaborating to get access to products that they're not currently developing in-house. And pharmaceutical companies are becoming more consumer products companies. They're really focused on the later stages of development and the commercial marketing of assets, much less focused today than they were 20 or 30 years ago on research and development and drug discovery.
This is very much true in the diagnostics industry. So they are, and have been for a long time, picking up new technologies from companies like ours. We just, today on the phone with such a company that really wants to work with us and collaborate with us. So there actually is collaboration, and certainly they want to leverage us and vice versa.
Caitlin?
Same story. Medical devices, absolutely the BMDMs, big medical device manufacturers, very much like the pharmas, have moved away from their own R&D, and they look to young companies like us. They want the angels or the venture people to take the early risk, and once it's proven, then they'll purchase it and carry it forward. And like Don, we've had some very, very good conversations with the BMDMs who clearly see this as a perfect expansion of their current products. And I think that's going to be the continued path going forward. I think you're going to see more and more of the real R&D coming from companies, young companies like ours, and the growth as well.
I welcome questions right now or at any point in the next 15 minutes. If you want to step up to the microphone, please do so.
Actually, I have a question for us. I mean, which is related to this point, which is the big challenge that comes out of this is the early stage financing and how do good ideas get nurtured. And it's something that there are pockets of things that are happening that are very good, but there's a lot of really great new technologies that are dying on the vine because they're too early for the big companies to take a risk.
And it has to be the big companies doing it. There's not the venture capital out there.
Well, and I was getting to that. It's too early for the venture capitalists to take a risk. Our company, we've been extremely fortunate to, we have had a lot of government support, $60 million of grants and contracts. These are our kind of, although our technology is extremely simple, to actually commercialize a new platform, automated platform, it's very capital intensive. And to actually get through the valley of death is still a major challenge and probably a place where the world could, and our country could do better. We do some very good things like the SBIR program and government grants for small businesses is really why we exist. I mean,
why is that though? I mean, why would you say that the system is failing in terms of angel investment and so on?
We do have angel investment. Yeah. So we actually have also been fortunate in that. Although part of our good luck with angel investment is because we actually got through the early stages of development, which would make us too early for most angel. It's angel groups that we talk to see 1,000 plans coming over their desks, and they might invest in a handful a year. Some of those thousands are actually worthy. because we've been so validated by the government interest, we can, it's helped us get angels, but that's not true for everybody. And my first company, I couldn't do that because I wasn't in the sweet spot of something.
So you're saying that there is just the capital, the investment world is just not geared up to the speed of change and development within.
It's hard. People don't like to take risks, and things at the very beginning are inherently risky, even very good ideas.
Although the landscape is changing, I mean, it is about risk mitigation, but now big pharma do have venture arms that they are looking at early stages. If you see, pharma also have presence in academia. Every big pharma, I don't know if every, but lots of big pharmaceutical companies have people sitting in academic institution looking for very, very, very early stages. There are VCs used to be, VCs they do play at the later stage, but there are lots of ventures that also look at just an idea. So there is shift, there's recognition that capital is needed at early stages where the risk is high, but it's there, it's out there. And you start with the friends and family and you build some momentum. But
and it does work. I'm just saying it could be better.
Okay, Sean?
I think one of the major differences between our industry and other sort of early stage investment opportunities is that we tend to be in an industry that's very capital intensive. You need a fair amount of infrastructure to do drug development. It's a very highly regulated industry in terms of product development, and the development cycles are long. So when you look at an investment in biotechnology, you're really looking at those three elements which are not found in other technology investments typically, particularly in IT where they have shorter development times, there isn't regulation, and it isn't as capital intensive to develop a product.
Caitlin, you are, firstly, does any of that echo with you, or you felt that there was a very receptive world to your ideas?
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I chose this particular company, in addition to just the spectacular effect that it can have, positive effect in the world, is that we're very, very different from these guys. The amount of capital that we require is a tiny fraction of what you gentlemen are seeking. And part of that is because it's a simple medical device. And part of it is just simply because we were able to come up with a very simple, elegant, inexpensive solution. And our timelines are therefore much shorter. I would say, and I've done some of this work previously, that that is very true, and that there is some significant risk for the very capital-intensive types of work like this. My world, not so much. We've been incredibly successful in raising the small amount of funds that we need.
Okay, the title does say bleeding edge, which is not the kind of thing you want to be saying to people in startups, is it? Do you? Is there? I mean, how much is that a serious risk within this particular ecology, market ecology, I suppose? And how much do you feel that? Are you kind of susceptible to being swallowed, Oren?
I mean, for us, it's all about the risk. And it's almost like either addiction or a sickness to do what we're doing, because you're always in the unknown. You have to be so comfortable being in the unknown. You have to be so comfortable with failures, and you have to be so, you got to embrace, bad news all the time, because you mostly, it's research. You're doing things that has not been done before. We're not going to redevelop, drug that's already on the market. So we do feel it, but we also feel the reward, and we do like the challenge and the competition, and we also like the idea that you're making something that's going to make a difference in the world, that you are part of some lunatic group of people that just believe that they can do something, and it's fun.
Feel fun, Don? You're not smiling at the moment.
I totally agree. To me, I love it, and I thrive on it, and it's very exciting. There's ups and downs, but my background is science, and like he was saying, you have to be good with ups and downs. I think for us. Right now, it feels like, I'm not a surfer, but it feels like we're just on a great wave, and lots of things are working. And the thing I was describing before is when you're floating around there waiting for a wave, and sometimes you're wondering if 3 months from now you will evaporate. So that's the scary part.
I missed you, sorry. Question.
Hi, yes. Just a real quick question. You talk about the treacherous path to market, the valley of death as you referred to it, regulatory complexity, capital intensity, all those factors. How much variability is that when you look at globally, differences in geography versus geography in terms of those pathways?
Yeah. Well, I think globally the regulatory nature is pretty similar. There are some regulatory approaches that you can use that will mitigate risk by introducing your drug in different areas of the world at different times. In terms of my industry, I think that to follow up on this discussion that we were having, one of the things that biotech has done really well is really manage this risk that these two gentlemen are talking about. There is a high level of risk, but biotech companies are better positioned to manage that risk than pharmaceutical companies. If you compare the pharmaceutical industry 30 years ago versus today, all of the drugs were coming out of the 7 major pharmaceutical companies. Today, about a third of the new drugs are being invented by the biotech industry. So biotech is good at managing risk, but there is a lot of risk to manage. And I guess it takes the lunatic fraction to do that.
My FDA path is so simple, 510K, don't even need clinical trials, 3 to 4 months. It's a good place to be.
Okay, so anybody in the medical sphere, go into diagnostics.
Medical device.
Well, exactly. Is that kind of, this is a huge question. It's perhaps outside of your ambit, but we've seen with, obviously global challenges like Ebola and now Zika and so on. There's all this talk about kind of fast-tracking stuff. Is that something that could be spread, that idea could be spread, when we're dealing with these huge challenges? And would that help you? Is that something you'd welcome? Or is frankly the level of regulation what we need?
For us, we certainly benefit for that. We've got a $43 million contract from a government organization, BARDA, which is exactly that. They have in fact, they're in charge of government contracting for Zika, so they're on that right now. Very effective. Sometimes when the government points at something, it's not very effective, but in this case, it really does accelerate. Exactly whether that's effective globally, I don't know, but I actually think there's some very good things happening in emergency response in the government.
Sorry, a question there. Join us.
Yeah, Theranos was so much in the news this past year, and I'm just wondering if you have seen any blowback, just in terms of that affecting the broader, perception about some of these diagnostic tests. Like, that feels like it got so far before people figured there was no there, and I'm just wondering if, being in the industry, you saw any blowback as a consequence of what happened there. I'm not
sure I understood that question.
I'm just thinking about, with Theranos, there was so much hype and expectations built into what they were doing, and I'm just curious as to whether or not you saw within the industry any kind of blowback or questioning, even among media, for diagnostic tests and what might be happening. From a layperson's perspective, I look at that and I think, how did that get so far down the pipe without anybody figuring out that there was no there there?
I'm trying to relate that.
She's talking about the Theranos
situation.
Theranos, yes.
Theranos.
And,
I'm sorry.
Theranos.
That's why I didn't understand.
I think
yes,
that
for me, there certainly is, I've talked to angel investors, and, every other one says, well, why aren't you Theranos? So there is certainly blowback there, and, we're not Theranos. We have something real, and we talk about that. We've been validated by lots of big money people looking over our shoulder, but there's definitely blowback. There's skepticism about diagnostics because of Theranos.
I have a question for you about that. It seems like this diagnostic area has moved a little bit in the direction where you have diagnostics as kind of novelty items, the 23andMe and some of these things like that, which are really, for me, very entertaining, and I buy them for my family. What do you think about that? What do you think about the impact of that sort of thing on your industry?
On the industry, I mean, it's on the industry. It's another, it's another industry. So I guess that's good. I love to know everything. So I look at my 23andMe, and
Yeah.
So I really think that is a great democratization of
Yeah.
information, and I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
And it's certainly the serious part of it, which is the future. What we will know about our biology and prevention, and that will come out of really having personal genomic information, which is definitely here and coming, I think is hugely important for democratizing the whole thing.
Kate, sorry. The stories, the lessons that you've got from the way that this is progressing, I mean, you're obviously very optimistic about your own journey. You're upbeat about the way that things are working.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'll give a couple of great examples that we're obviously getting down to the tail end of things and close to market, so we have a lot of, it's very clear that this is going to work, and we have huge pull from the physicians who are our target market. One of the things that really helps us is the fact that we are dealing with a problem that is, there's a great deal of pressure, obviously, to reduce antibiotics. We all understand the critical importance of reducing antibiotics in society, but also in the individual. And so we're just we're very fortunate to be in the perfect space. We believe that, antibiotics, otitis media, middle ear infections, as I mentioned yesterday, #1 reason for antibiotics in children. And we believe that we can cut antibiotics in otitis media by 50% or more. That's a very significant positive impact. And the insurance carriers are very much in favor, the doctors are very much in favor. And it's stories, I go on these tours and I go to these presentations and these meetings, and every time I find people who have stories that we could have had such an impact, positive impact on their life. Just in this room, there are 2 people that I was chatting with. One fellow, for example, who, as a child, repeated ear infections, repeated sinus infections, lots of antibiotics, to the point at 8 years old, get an ear infection, say, "Mom, I need an antibiotic." The kid is diagnosing antibiotics. And now, decades later, he has huge repeat infections, 14 surgeries, and completely antibiotic resistant. And another person that I was speaking with today and yesterday who misdiagnosed with antibiotics, with ear infections, 6 months before she was properly diagnosed with throat cancer. That's huge. Had any one of those doctors had our device, they would have known instantly, not an ear infection, and moved forward. That's a big impact. So yes, we're very positive.
I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.